You are in the temple of the rants where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one is for Dan, who says, rant about your The Asterisk War Sucks series. It was the first video series of yours I remember watching, so I wanted to know if you have any more thoughts on it. How long did it take you to make it? Did you scrap anything? Just anything. Thanks. Well, basically, the way that the Asterisk War Sucks series came about is that I had been on almost 2 months of basically hiatus. It was after the summer of 2015. I was struggling to figure out where to go with the channel because I had tried covering more current stuff, like as it was coming out earlier in the spring season. It hadn't really gotten much attention. I had done this big series on Psycho Pass at the start of the year that didn't do nearly as well as the Sword Art Online series that I had done just a year prior. So it was like, the SAO2 Sucks videos got like a ton of attention, and then I did Psycho Pass versus Psycho Pass 2 because Psycho Pass 2 also sucked, and, people didn't seem to care as much. I think part of it's my fault that the early videos didn't really have the comedy element that really came in the later parts of the series, so it wasn't like hype to watch, and also not nearly as many people care about Psycho Pass as do about SAO. Over the summer I did this 3-part Nanoha retrospective, which was a lot of work and a lot of fun to do for me, but didn't get very many views. And then I did a Yu Yu Hakusho video, which did pretty well, but like after that I just didn't know where to go. And so, I think I had already done the Hideaki Anno Part 1 and 2 video, and then I started work on this one where I was going to go through the whole history of Studio Gainax's shows that people don't really talk about, do a video on that. Nothing was really clicking. And then the Asterisk War came out, so like, the start of that season, it was fall 2015, and I, watched the first episodes of basically everything, as I tend to do, just sampling stuff, trying to figure out what was popular. And I was just struck by the fact that there were so many nearly identical light novel adaptations that season, because it was the Asterisk War, Chivalry of a Failed Knight, and then that other one with the orange-haired girl that was like they were all very fucking similar to each other. For some reason my mouth is burning after eating these Reese's Pieces. That's not normal. So anyway, yeah, so it was like just seeing these all back to back was such a striking experience, because it was very much that feeling of like, wow, anime has gone to shit, like inevitably it felt that way. And as I was plugging away at this script about all these old Gainax shows, like, it was taking a long time to watch all of them, and I knew nobody was going to care. Like, I knew this was a video that had no marketability. I knew it was a video that, I was going to have to break it into parts, and, like, already my Hideaki Anno video hadn't even gotten that many views, so I was just like, well, this definitely will get even less than that. My Patreon was chugging along just fine, but I felt like I needed to do another SAO Sucks video if I really wanted to pump myself up. So, like, halfway into the season, I think, maybe a little more, because I think there were like 8 episodes of Asterisk War out when I started on the script. It was in November, and I just was like, what is the most popular show on Mal that is the worst? Because it was like number 3 of the season in terms of popularity on my anime list, and it was being pushed by like Crunchyroll and stuff. So like, people were making it out like this was like a big show, and I just remembered it being so fucking horrible. And then there was also the fact that it was by A1 Pictures, and I had this sort of burgeoning bone to pick with Studio A1 Pictures, because so many of the shows I'd watched from them had been disappointments. Like, they have this tendency of shows that have strong premises, strong starts, but then they just turn into total clusterfucks by the end. And it had felt like it had been going on for years, that like every show I watched from them felt that way. So, the fact that it was an A1 Pictures show, and it was you know, like the most generic of the light novel adaptations. It was the worst of them all. And I think I had even tweeted back when the season started that the difference between the Asterisk War and Chivalry of a Failed Knight was the difference between a 1 and a 3. And that was what I wanted to explore, was that distinction between like how you can fuck up absolutely everything versus how you can fuck up most of everything, you know? Because to most people, to most viewers, basically anything below like a 5 is all the same. Like, you rarely see people really make any distinction between 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on like a rating scale. And so I wanted to break down what about the Asterisk War made it so bad that it deserved a 1 out of 10, that there was no redeeming qualities to it at all. And in order to break that down, I really needed to just go into like crazy amounts of depth. So basically, I was just like, "Fuck it, I'll do that." And the nature of it evolved as I was working on it, because I had initially, I think I would have just watched the first like 4 episodes and then wrote about those. So probably what I did was watch 4 episodes, then went through them and did it in like the fine tooth comb style that I did the SAO videos. And I really wanted to take the viewer along on the experience with me. I wanted you to have the feeling of like, you know, getting into the show the same way I did, of like seeing the poster on Mal, seeing the category list, like making snap judgments about it, like, you know, looking at the poster and like determining what it says to me about the show, just because I want you to go in with like with the understanding that I have all that baggage coming with me into it. That like, yeah, for some people, they'll just see this poster and they'll just think, oh, cool, there's swords, I want to watch this. But like, my assumption includes all this other stuff that I can determine about the show. And then to go in and just scene by scene break down why I am not having a good time, you know. And I ended up spending like 3 whole videos just on the first episode. When I go back through the series, because I've re-listened to the whole thing, you know, I've rewatched, re-listened, and I would say part 1 I like a lot, part 2 I like, part 3 I think is a little unnecessary. I mean, there's still parts of it that are funny. There are parts I probably would cut if I went back and did it. It was that at the time I was going through it with the mentality of like, break down every single thing so that we know every single way that this show is bad. But some of those points are just not as interesting or not as funny as other ones. They're not as sticky. You know, like the whole part where I'm just complaining about the like corrupted data file of the one girl's picture. Who cares? You know, like, not a big deal. So I would have probably cut that one down a little bit. Well, then, you know, after I had watched those first 4 and written that part, that was when I started thinking about, like, well, really, why is it bad that these characters are cliche? Like, why does that bother me so much? And then I made part 4, the cliche characters one. And that was the only part that I edited myself, just because I make reference to so many different shows and so many different types of shows that, like, I knew Devu hadn't seen. Because for anybody who doesn't know, Devu, who was editing for me at the time, like, he was completely new to anime when he started as my editor. So anything he edited for me, he had to watch the entire show in order to edit it. And if I needed him to, like, make reference to older shows, you know, I would have to, like, help him figure out what episodes this stuff is in, what would visually represent this. Oh my god, I am going on and on. This is going to take a while. So, like, yeah, the part 4 I edited myself. I think the editing is okay. That part is another one where I think I used too many examples. I think I made the point best at, like, the beginning and end of the video. The midsection, maybe I didn't really need to cover every character and every flaw in the show. You know, like, I would just had this mentality of, I'm going to break down absolutely everything. In retrospect, some stuff is more interesting than others. Then there's a couple more where I go through, like, all of episode 2, all of episodes 3 and 4 in a couple of the parts. And those are fine, but, like, my favorites are, like, the one that's about just how the protagonist is the worst, how the setting is the worst, even though that one's a little long-winded as well. The later episodes of the series are my favorites. Part 9, where I go in on A1 Studios. Part 10, which I love as... Part 10 is kind of my favorite in a way because of the fact that I break down a whole arc from a lens of like all the problems that I could have with it, and then at the end just kind of break down how like none of that really matters because the real problem is that I'm not the audience for this show, that like there's no reason for me to be watching it, you know. And then of course the breakdown of the tournament arc I like, and of course the big comparison to Chivalry of a Failed Knight. That is the most fun part by far. Actually, that's, you know, I said 10 is my favorite. 10 is my favorite from a writing perspective. 12 A and B is the best because it was cataloging a moment in time I couldn't have made up. Like, the fact that those two shows ran alongside each other is legendary to me. Like, I can't even believe it happened, and that the parallels were so insanely strong, like so specific as to be really mind-blowing. It's like, I can't believe there were literally two things this identical running at the same time, but one of them is like passable and one of them is awful, and it just made for a perfect comparison. Like, I could never fabricate that. I can't make that happen again. If I could, believe me, I would, so I could write another video like that. But, you know, it was just perfect that it happened that way. As for how long this all took, I wrote everything up through part 8 in, like, a couple days. Like, I would have probably watched the show, then just back-to-back wrote all those scripts in the course of a few days. And then sent it all to Devu. So, like, aside from the fact that I edited part 4 myself, the rest of it was edited by him, and I would have just churned out all these scripts and sent them along. Part 9 and 10 would have been soon to follow. I believe that, because I remember doing it all in the span of, like, a week at the very end of November, and, like, the first 8 videos, and then the next ones were at the start of December. It wasn't until the end of December that I did the 2 Chivalry of a Failed Knight parts, because I had to watch that show and all that. But, I mean, none of them took long to write. None of my videos ever take long to write. I don't think the only video I think I can remember doing that in one part took longer than a day was the Aesthetic is Narrative video, because that one was just really challenging to write, and I think it took me a couple days. But, like, if it's a multi-part series, I might, take breaks in between parts, but I usually do write them all at once. Like, the Steins Gate versus Steins Gate Zero series, that was all written in, like, a night, and then just broken into parts where appropriate. Maybe 2 nights. But yeah, like, it doesn't ever take me very long to write. And so the editing took Devu a couple of months. Like, the rate at which he edited it is the rate at which it came out. So, like, that's exactly how long it took. So yeah, it's weird because in my mind it wasn't like it was such a massive project. I mean, I definitely was going out of my way. There's a fucking car alarm's going off. I hope it's not mine. Nope. But yeah, like, I was kind of going out of my way to try to make it a novel, because it was, if it's at least 50,000 words, that's considered the length of a novel. So I broke 50,000 words, and, like, I was very proud of that fact, but in retrospect, I would cut it down, in certain areas. But I still am very proud of it. I mean, it was the best video series I had done up to that time, and, like, my mentality towards it was, like, this is the explanation of why this type of show is bad, and there is no need to do this again. Like, I think a lot of people came to me hoping that that was going to be what my channel was, is me taking shitty shows and breaking them down at extensive length. But it's like, that's not what I'm interested in doing full time. It's like, I like talking about all kinds of anime. I want to talk about every different way that an anime can be, So, like, if another show sucks exactly the same way the Asterisk War sucks, why would I talk about that one? Like, you already know. You can apply the things I said to this one. That's the way I always looked at it. So I understand that that's not the way to grow a channel big on YouTube, but, like, to me, it's more interesting to move on to talk about something that does things differently, be that well or poorly, and to always look at what elements make something different as opposed to, covering the same ground over and over again. But yeah, I mean, I'm still very proud of that series. I don't think I've done another like big series that was as good as that one. But like, I also haven't really attempted to do that. Like, the next video, like my favorite video that I've done is The Great Anime Director Who Time Forgot, and it's like that's about 20 minutes long because that's how much material there was. But like, in terms of the craft of it, I think it's even stronger than the Asterisk Wars series, you know. But there's just no replacing the epic feeling you get from watching something that's 4.5 hours long, that really go, you know, you feel like you take a whole journey with this show and with me. And you know, I would love to have the opportunity to do something like that again, but I haven't had another show that inspired that made me feel like it was worth digging that deep, because nothing's been bad in a unique enough way as compared to the Asterisk War. But maybe one day, if I find something that really, really sends shivers down my spine, I'll get to work.